A 29-year-old Colorado mother vanished on Thanksgiving Day.
That claim says that Frazee killed Kelsey Barrett to get full custody of their 1-year-old child.
With a bat in the back of the head as Kelsey is sniffing candles with a blindfold over her eyes.
We have not found Kelsey at this time.
75 members of law enforcement who are combing the property of Patrick Frazee.
Every agency is here to find Kelsey.
According to Patrick Frazee's mistress, Crystal Kenny, after murdering Kelsey, Frazee put Kelsey's body, along with the bat that he used to kill her, into a black tote and burned it.
We're learning prosecutors will not be seeking the death penalty against Patrick Frazee, the Colorado man accused of murdering Kelsey Barrett. The mother of his child was allegedly beaten to death with a baseball bat. Reports say the 90-day deadline has passed to file a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. So was there a burden of proof in seeking the death penalty? Let's bring in David Pietro, a former prosecutor. David, thank you for joining us. I think folks are kind of curious about what factors are brought into account when you're trying to determine if authorities are going to seek the death penalty, and does it depend on the state?
I think it's becoming more of an issue, a political issue, because we have elected state attorneys and elected district attorneys throughout this country. So it's a community issue. Is this the community where they live in one that favors the death penalty? What we're seeing is, as crime is historically going down in this nation, in particular violent crime, the appetite for jurors to give the death penalty is becoming less frequent. We're also, since the Supreme Court in many states now require 12-person unanimous jury recommendation for death, we're finding that prosecutors are less aggressive in seeking the death penalty. Another reason why in this particular case the death penalty might not be sought is that there's no body. Without the body, it might be difficult for the prosecution to prove the heinous nature of the crime, leading a jury more towards a death penalty. So it could be a multifactorial issue in this case as to why the death penalty is not being sought.
You know, that's what I was going to ask you, because we have talked about the fact that her remains have still not been found, and it would be difficult, obviously, to seek the death penalty. So what is next in this case? Because folks at home may say, well, if there's no body, he can still be convicted of murder if he is guilty, correct?
You can absolutely, in this country, be convicted without a body. It's happened many, many times. I think people are following podcasts nowadays where they have these cases where there's no body and the crimes are solved even without a body, or the body is discovered later on. So you can absolutely, through the testimony of the witness where he admitted to killing her, the blood that was spattered all around the home, the motive, there's definitely enough to convict and presumably put this individual in prison for the rest of his life.
All right, David, I want you to stay with me because we were following this story really closely in New York. This dad allegedly told police he thought he had dropped his 2 children off at daycare, but authorities say his 1-year-old twins were left in the car, and he left them in the car for 8 hours. So now to the burden of proof on this one. I mean, we've heard from the wife that this may have just been a horrible mistake. If it is a horrible mistake, how can you possibly prove that?
This is an interesting case, and we've seen these. This is not the first. This is one of many. At my mind, if I was a prosecutor, I would be leaning more towards an intentional homicide, because it's really hard for me to believe, and I think most average people in this country, that you would leave your 1-year-old twins in the back of a car. So I'd really look into the motive of a potential motive that would be behind a potential homicide. What was going on in the family life? Was there financial problems? Was there marital problems? Because it's really hard to believe this is it's a tragic mistake. It's not to say it's not possible, but it seems to me very unlikely that something like this would happen.
Yeah, your mind's a little bit blown as a parent, but then again, just like you said, we have seen this before. We also want to point out that the attorney for Juan Rodriguez is HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson. Joey was on the network a little bit earlier today, and I want to play that and then get your reaction. Listen here, please.
I can tell you that when I got to the 52nd precinct, which is in the Bronx, on Friday evening after getting the call, about midnight or so, he was just beside himself, unable to compose himself, full of grief, full of anguish. At this point, of course, he was released on $100,000 bail. It was pre-negotiated by the district attorney and myself. And the family at this point are wrapping their arms around him and trying to do all they can. If that's not enough, though, so, we will talk about the option of committing him because it's that serious. He's hurting that bad. The family's reeling and just don't know what to say.
So to really bring in the point, I mean, we talked about the fact that he's full of grief. Just because he's full of grief and just because this possibly could have been unintentional does not free him from the possibility of these charges. He could still be culpable. Am I right?
Well, of the lesser included of a child abuse or negligent homicide, absolutely. I think the district attorney has a rather easy case because even if it was a mistake, as a parent, you have a higher duty under the law to care for children, just like teachers and babysitters. You have a higher duty to make yourself aware of not harming a human being or human life that cannot care for itself. So I think of the lesser included, it's going to be a hard stretch to prove innocence or to get to innocence. But on the level of homicide, it's going to take a lot of investigation if that's where the district attorney may go in the future to determine whether it was intentional or not.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking nonetheless. David Pietro, thank you so much for joining us on this story.
Thank you.